Oh god, it's happening again. When I saw the trailer for Blood Oath: The Sword Rises, I got so excited. What they were showing us were massive medieval battles in this immersive historical based setting. It looked like the perfect mix, something like Mountain Blade and Mordhau. 32 players going up against each other in these pit battles, moving on to sieges, using siege weaponry and climbing the ladders. And then I saw something else. You see, what we were shown there is the arcade mode, which is only one mode for this game. Then I saw a bit more about the free mode, and whilst it looked incredible, it reminded me of something. It reminded me of a game called Of Kings and Men, and many of you know what that name means. And that is why this game is starting to worry me a little bit. To give you some background, Of Kings and Men was a game that was around about 2016. It was a medieval inspired by the Persistent World mod for Mountain Blade. You were in a world as a medieval soldier, and you could team up with other people. You could have peasants that would collect resources, mine, be lumberjacks, craft weaponry that you could then get yourself. You could build towns and cities together, then go off raiding with other people. It was almost like an open world medieval experience that was multiplayer only, and it looked fantastic. The hype was incredible around it, and unfortunately when it released, no one cared. The game didn't come out the way that it was promoted. It came out in this arcadey mode that was just players fighting each other and some capture the flag type experiences. There wasn't this actual free mode because it wasn't ready yet. They hadn't developed it, and then they just stopped mentioning it. And eventually the developers ran off and they didn't actually complete the game. I think they're working on The Last Oasis now, which actually looks like a decent game that they're working on, and so props to them for doing that. However, that's all I could think about when I saw Blood Oath: When the Sword Rises. But let me give you some context. What is this game? Well, it is a multiplayer only, with massive online sieges and battles that you can take part in. The footage that you can see here is recorded in the game with real players. They've had some private events to test it out, of course, and my, does it look fun. And this arcade mode that they're showing here does look incredible. It looks very much inspired by something like Mountain Blade and Mordhau with the multiplayer-focused gameplay style. Of course, getting the combat right is the most important part with a medieval sword fighting game like this, but hey, from what we've seen so far, I actually think it looks pretty intuitive and it's done all right. There is actually a demo that I have messed about with that gives you some idea of how the swordplay will work. They're still running some private events, and on their Discord, if you guys go and check it out, there is a lot of information about all the modes and the events that they're testing currently. So this arcade mode was great. I saw this and I was like, cool, another multiplayer medieval game that I can get my hands on and maybe have a bit of fun with. And then I saw the free mode. And don't get me wrong, when I see stuff like this, I think it's incredible. However, it's sometimes too incredible and too good to be true. You see, this free mode looks incredibly ambitious. You have three classes: peasants, craftsmen, and soldiers, and they do pretty much what it says on the tin. The peasants go around gathering resources for the craftsmen that make them into weaponry, clothes, etc., and then you have the soldiers that go off and fight. Bear in mind, this is multiplayer only, so these are all real players that have to be working together, and they have to be able to form this working machine with each person doing a different part in the cogs. Each position here also has its own upgrade tree. With peasants and craftsmen, you can become high-tier merchants eventually, and that can be a profession within the game. Or with a soldier, you can eventually become knights and become one of the toughest guys on the battlefield. Each of them having their own skills that you can work towards and put different points wherever you want to, depending on what profession you want to be and how you want them to go about their world. And this is a massive free world as well, with players doing all of these jobs, or at least that's the intention. There's also a mercenary class where you can move around freely on the open map instead of just settling in one city. You can put camps dotted around, and maybe you can do some missions for people for gold and resources, or join in an army when they go sieging. There's also a government system with counts, dukes, and kings. These kings, they do have permadeath options where when they die, their heirs will have to take over, or other people have to be elected up to those positions, meaning that you're not going to have the same person at the top of the food chain all the time. Other people will get the chance to reach the top and change the way that their kingdom runs. And speaking of kingdoms, the map will be set out into different provinces, with special resources having a settlement in each of these places. Of course, as I mentioned, with resources means there's incentive for other people and other clans to start trading with you, maybe even eventually raiding you. Alliances will be formed and enemies will be broken throughout this very player-controlled world. And as a player, when you start, you can find a place to settle if you're the first person there, or you can be granted land by the nobles at the top. From this, other people can join your villages or towns, and they can help build it up into a towering city with working trade routes, infrastructure, and economy. As I mentioned, there will be certain parts of the game that will include permadeath, but as a player, not only can you have and join these settlements with other people, but you can have your own resources. Then if you do die, you can have an heir or a son or a daughter that can take over that you can then play as. Furthermore, they're trying to make it as accessible as possible. Anyone can host a server. They can customize it to their will. For example, if you want, you can disable or enable the permadeath systems. It's basically like what Kings and Men wanted but failed to do. And this is where it starts to worry me. You see, with these games, it's all well and good with them saying this is what's going to happen. And to the developers, if you're watching this, I wish you the best of luck. What you have explained is one of the hardest things to pull off because it's never been done in a standalone game before. You see, when Kings and Men tried to do it, they had a massive issue. They released the game with this arcade mode, which is a game mode that is being planned in this game here as well. But the problem is, they released the arcade mode years before they were even planning on bringing the actual main game mode. So people were playing it and then they're just like, well, is this the game? And they left, meaning the developers ran out of money and of course motivation to actually want to carry on and produce the game that they'd promised. These types of games have to release with their main game mode forefront. You can't release with an arcade mode and say this massive open world free play mode is coming later, because people aren't going to wait around that long, especially with a small indie development team like this. People need to see what you've promised from the get-go. I've seen some of the trailers and things, and it has been mentioned that the free mode will be released in more basic forms and more stuff will be added on. Now, as long as that basic form is enough to get people started, then that's brilliant, and that will help with building up a community completely. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you get everything done that you've promised. Because this is only multiplayer, it's so player driven that you need a dedicated player base. Not just people that drop in and out every now and then to play the arcade mode, but you need people that are willing to take on the different roles of this free mode. You need people that are willing to become peasants and to work their way up from there, or craftsmen to make the armor, because from my experience, everyone kind of just wants to play as the soldier. And if they do that, then it's never gonna work. Now, there are Mount & Blade mods like Persistent World that have done this successfully, but that's because Mount & Blade had a very core and organized player base to start with, so hopefully those types of people can come over to this one and make it work. However, I do have my doubts. Once again, I'd like to say to anyone watching this video, it looks incredible, and I think we all agree on this, but be wary. We've seen of Kings and Men try exactly the same thing, and whilst I don't think it's fair to put that blame on these developers, I do have to say to everyone, be wary, because these types of games that look incredible will only be incredible if they actually finish. And I wish the developers all the luck, and I will be following very closely with everything that happens, and boy, I do sure hope this comes true, because if this is a game that releases, this could be one of the next big games in the medieval industry. It's been dominated by Mount & Blade and things like Kingdom Come Deliverance and Mordhau for so long. We need a new indie developer to come up and show us something new that hasn't been done in this genre before, and this could be it. Blood Oath, When the Sword Rises, does slightly worry me. But what do you guys think? Are you excited for this game? Do you think that they're going to be able to accomplish everything that they have promised in the trailers? Please leave your comments down below, and I'd be very happy. If the developers are watching this, I'd love to organize some sort of interview with you guys and ask you more about this game, because I'm so intrigued. Yeah, I think it's very important that you guys speak to the community and the audience that you're trying to build, and make sure you explain to them what you're doing differently from a game like of Kings and Men. So please, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, dislike it if you didn't. But until then, I will see you in the next one.